Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight, we leave the marble halls of the gods and the whispers of ancient Olympus behind to journey toward a different kind of infinity. We are traveling to the edge of the known world, to a time when the horizon was not a mere line, but a profound and echoing question. As always, let me know where in the world you are listening from. Perhaps you are near a coast, hearing the rhythmic pull of the tide, or perhaps you are deep inland, tucked away in the silence of a city, dreaming of the salt air. Get cozy, settle in, and let us begin. In the beginning, there was the sea. Before the empires of the Ottomans or the Venetians, before the triremes of the Greeks, or the heavy galleons of the Spanish, there was the Mediterranean. The ancients called it the middle of the earth, a sapphire jewel held in the palm of 3 continents. But to know the sea is not merely to look at it. It is to measure it, to respect its temper, and to map its hidden heart. His name was Piri Reis. Outside his high window, the Dardanelles churned with the traffic of 1,000-year ships carrying silk, heavy sacks of spice, and the soft, lingering sorrows of sailors who had seen too much of the world. But inside the room, there was only the steady, rhythmic scratch of a reed pen and the thick, earthy scent of expensive pigments. Piri was not just a sailor. He was a weaver of worlds. He understood, as few men did, that a map is more than ink on parchment. It is a prayer for safe passage. It is a memory of every jagged rock that ever tore a hull, and every hidden spring that ever quenched a dying sailor's thirst. He worked upon a fragment of gazelle skin, supple, pale, and ancient, prepared with a care that made it feel like silk beneath his fingertips. As he drew, he was not merely tracing coastlines. He was stitching together the scattered fragments of a broken history. He had before him maps from the time of Alexander the Great, charts that had survived fire and war and the slow rot of time. He had portolans captured from Portuguese explorers in the heat of battle, and, whispered in the quiet corners of history, he held a map from a man named Columbus, a navigator who had claimed to see shores that, according to the scholars of the day, simply did not exist. Chaos, in the world of the mapmaker, is the unmapped. To Piri Reis, an empty space on a chart was a yawning void, much like the one that birthed the gods in the oldest of myths. It was a silence that needed to be filled with names: the Cape of Storms, the Islands of the Blessed, the Golden Horn. As he dipped his brush into the lapis lazuli blue to paint the depths of the Atlantic, the world began to take its first true shape. It was a shape not defined by the myths of old, but by the cold, beautiful mathematics of the stars. But a map is a dangerous thing. To hold the world in your hands is to claim a kind of quiet divinity. And as Piri Reis traced the jagged edge of the Brazilian coastland he had never seen with his own eyes, but knew through the reflected sight of others, he felt the weight of the prophecy that haunts all great men, that to see too much is to invite the wind to take it all away. Think for a moment of the room where Piri worked. It is late. The oil lamp flickers, casting long, dancing shadows against the stone walls. The air is cool, carrying the faint, metallic temps of the sea. There is no sound but the breathing of the man and the sighing of the wind against the shutters. This is where the world was reborn, not in a clash of swords, but in the silence of a scholar's study. The gazelle skin he used was not a flat surface. It was a living thing. It had once draped the ribs of a creature that ran across the dusty plains of Anatolia. Now it would hold the weight of the oceans. Piri looked at the parchment and saw not just a surface, but a mirror. He saw the curves of Africa, the stretching fingers of Europe, and the mysterious, reaching arm of a new world that seemed to defy the logic of the ancients. He began with the compass rose. He drew it with a steady hand, 32 points, radiating outward like a star. This was the heartbeat of the map. It was the center from which all direction flowed. To a sailor lost in the black of a moonless night, that star was the only truth left in the universe. It told him where the north sat, cold and unwavering. It told him where the east lay, promising the warmth of the rising sun. Piri painted the rose in vibrant reds and deep golds, colors that seemed to glow even in the dim light of his lamp. As he worked, he thought of his uncle, Piri Reis, the legendary pirate turned admiral. Kemal had taught him that the sea was not a road, but a labyrinth. To navigate it, one needed more than a steady hand on the tiller. One needed a library in the mind. Every inlet, every sandbar, every change in the color of the water held a story. The Mediterranean was a sea of stories, and the book of navigation, the Kitab-i-Bahri, was to be the encyclopedia of those tales. Imagine the texture of the ink. It was made from charred vine stems and the galls of oak trees, mixed with water and gum Arabic. It was blacker than the deepest trench of the Aegean. When Piri touched the pen to the skin, the ink bled slightly into the pores of the leather, rooting itself there forever. He drew the mountains of the Maghreb, peaking them with tiny, delicate strokes of green and brown. He drew the Nile, a long, winding vein of blue that fed the thirsty earth of Egypt. But it was the islands that required the most patience. The Mediterranean is a sea of islands scattered like handfuls of gravel across a tiled floor. Crete, Cyprus, Rhodes, Sicily. Each one had its own character, its own winds, its own dangers. Piri knew them all. He knew where the currents pulled toward the rocks and where the lee of the land offered a sanctuary from the winter gales. He drew them with the tenderness of a lover, outlining their harbors and naming their peaks. As the hours drifted by, the map began to breathe. The lines of latitude and longitude crossed one another like the threads of a loom. This was the rumline system, a web of geometry that allowed a captain to set a course across the open water without the need for landmarks. It was a bridge of logic built over a chasm of uncertainty. Piri paused, leaning back to stretch his aching shoulders. He looked at the fragment of the world he had captured. In the west, he had sketched a coastline that shouldn't have been there. It was a land of lush forests and strange animals, a land that the Portuguese called the Land of the Holy Cross. He had labeled it with notes in the Ottoman script, delicate calligraphy that flowed like the waves themselves. He wrote of the people who lived there, of the birds with feathers like jewels, and of the gold that supposedly littered the riverbeds. He was blending the old world with the new, the known with the imagined. It was a moment of transition, a hinge in history. Behind him lay the Middle Ages, with their monsters and their flat horizons. Ahead of him lay the Age of Discovery, with its vast, terrifying distances and its promise of infinite wealth. Piri stood at the center of that hinge, holding the pen that would turn the page. The shadows in his room grew longer. The lamp began to sputter, the oil running low. But Piri did not stop. He was obsessed with the accuracy of the curve. He knew that a mistake of a single millimeter on his desk could mean a tragedy of 100 miles at sea. A map was a contract of trust. A sailor put his life in the hands of the cartographer, believing that the line on the page matched the reality of the world. Piri took that trust seriously. Every stroke of his pen was a silent vow. He thought of the many sources he had used to create this masterpiece. He had consulted 20 different maps. 8 were Ptolemaic, dating back to the 2nd century, preserved by the scholars of Byzantium and the Caliphates. 4 were Portuguese, recently drawn and still damp with the salt of the Atlantic. And one, the most precious of all, was the map of Colombo. Piri had obtained it from a Spanish prisoner, a man who had sailed with Columbus on his voyages to the Indies. This lost map of Columbus, which no longer exists in its original form, lived on through Piri's hand. He was the keeper of secrets, the curator of the world's most dangerous knowledge. As he looked at the new world on his parchment, he wondered if the people there knew that their existence was being recorded in a small room in Gallipoli. He wondered if the trees he painted felt the weight of the ink. The world of Piri Reis was a world of connection. He didn't see the Mediterranean as a barrier between the East and the West, between Islam and Christendom. He saw it as a common ground. The sea didn't care about the faith of the man who drowned in it. The wind didn't choose which flag to tatter. In the Kitabwe Bari, Piri wrote for the benefit of all mariners. He wanted to pull the veil back from the face of the earth so that everyone might see the truth of its features. As we drift further into the story of the great navigator, let your mind become like that piece of gazelle skin. Let the worries of your day be smoothed out, stretched thin and clear. Imagine yourself in that quiet room in 1513. The scent of the sea is coming through the window, cooling the air. The rhythm of the tide is a heartbeat, slow and steady. The world is being mapped. The chaos is being named. The void is being filled with the blue of the ocean and the gold of the sun. There is no rush. There is only the pen, the ink, and the endless, beautiful horizon. In the chapters to come, we will sail with Piri. We will see the storms he weathered and the secrets he uncovered. We will walk the docks of Venice and the markets of Istanbul. We will learn how a single man could see the shape of the world before the world was even ready to be seen. But for now, let the image of the compass rose spin slowly in your mind. North, south, east, west. All paths lead back to the center. All paths lead to the silence of the sea. Close your eyes and feel the gentle rocking of the boat as it leaves the harbor of Gallipoli. The shore is fading. The lights of the city are becoming dim like dying embers. Ahead of us lies the Mediterranean, wide and dark and full of dreams. We are in the hands of the mapmaker now, and he knows the way home. Before the map was a map, it was a life. Imagine, if you will, the high, golden plateaus of Anatolia. Here, the air is thin and smells of sun-baked dust and wild thyme. It was here that the gazelle once ran, a creature of liquid grace and nervous energy. In the philosophy of the Ottoman artisans, to use the skin of such an animal for a map was not an act of destruction, but of transformation. The gazelle, which once navigated the hills by instinct, would now navigate the world through geometry. The preparation of the parchment was a ritual of patience, a process designed to outlast the centuries. It began with the soaking of the hide in lime water, a slow bath that cleansed away the traces of the wild. Then came the scraping, the rhythmic, hypnotic sound of a curved blade moving over the skin, removing every imperfection until the surface was as smooth as a polished pearl. Finally, it was stretched upon a wooden frame, pulled tight until it hummed like a lute string when tapped. Piri Reis sat before this blank expanse of vellum. It was a pale, creamy white, catching the amber glow of his lamp. To anyone else, it was a void. To Piri, it was a mirror of the cosmos. He touched the surface with the pads of his fingers, feeling the subtle grain, the faint ghost of the animal's life still lingering in the fibers. He knew that for this map to survive the damp salt of a captain's cabin or the humid heat of the tropics, the skin had to be cured with more than just salted, had to be cured with intent. In the year 1513, the world was breaking open. The old maps, the ones based on the visions of Ptolemy, were cracking at the seams. For over 1,000 years, men believed the world ended at the Pillars of Hercules. They believed the Atlantic was a green sea of darkness, a place where the water boiled and the sun turned skin to ash. But Piri knew better. He had seen the charts brought back from the edge of the world. He had spoken to men who had tasted the fresh water of the Orinoco and seen the fires of the distant south. He began the work of the great synthesis. This was not the work of a single man, but the gathering of 100 ghosts. Piri laid out his sources. There were 8 maps from the time of the Abbasid caliphs, ancient, dusty scrolls that held the secrets of the Indian Ocean. There were 4 Portuguese charts, stolen or bought in the shadowy markets of Cairo, showing the newfound route around the Cape of Good Hope. But the most mysterious of all was the Columbus map. Piri leaned in closer to his desk, the reed penned accomplished in the air. He thought of the Spanish sailor his uncle Piri Reis had captured years before. That sailor had been a pilot for Christopher Columbus. He had carried a map that showed the Antilles, the lands to the west. It was a map drawn with the fever of discovery, a map that shouldn't have existed according to the monks in the monasteries of Europe. Piri began to transfer these worlds onto his gazelle skin. Listen to the sound of the pen. Scritch, scritch. It is the sound of a border being defined. He started with the western coast of Africa. He drew the bulging curve of the Maghreb, the jagged teeth of the Atlantic cliffs, and the long, sandy stretches of the Sahara's edge. He used a deep, earthy ochre for the land, a color made from the very soil of the earth he was depicting. Then he moved his hand across the ocean sea. Here, the gazelle skin was most empty, most silent. He began to draw the islands, the Azores, the Canaries. He painted them like emeralds dropped into a bowl of sapphire. Each island was a sanctuary, a tiny dot of certainty in a desert of waves. He wrote their names in the Thuluth scripta, flowing, elegant calligraphy that looked like the wind-drippled surface of the water itself. As he reached the new world, Piri's hand slowed. He was drawing the coast of Brazil, the islands of the Caribbean, and the mysterious landmass that stretched toward the south. Today, we look at this map and wonder, how did he know the shape of the South American coast so accurately? How did he draw the mountains of the Andes when no European had yet climbed them? Some say it was luck. Others say he had access to a lost library of the ancients. But Piri, sitting in the silence of his study in Jellybolu, would have simply smiled. He knew that the world is a connected thing. If you know the stars and you know the winds and you listen to the stories of 1,000 sailors, the shape of the earth begins to reveal itself to you, like a face emerging from the fog. The ink he used for the coastlines was a special blend. He took the soot of burned pine and mixed it with the gall of an oak tree. To this, he added a drop of honey to give the ink a luster, a depth that would catch the light even in the darkness of a ship's hold. When he drew the line of the shore, it wasn't a flat line, it was a living boundary. He added tiny microscopic details, the mouths of rivers, the hidden coves, the treacherous sandbars. He decorated the empty spaces of the ocean with ships of Ottoman galleys with their elegant curved prows, and European carracks with their high square sterns. He painted them with such detail that you can almost hear the creak of the timber and the snap of the canvas in the wind. These were not just decorations, they were symbols of the human spirit, tiny wooden bubbles of life floating on the vast, indifferent breasts of the sea. And then there were the monsters. In the corners of the map, where the water turned cold and the stars grew strange, Piri painted the creatures of the deep, not because he believed in dragons, but because he understood the psychology of the sailor. Every man who goes to sea carries a monster in his heart, the fear of the unknown, the dread of what lies beneath the keel. He painted a giant fish with a castle on its back, a reference to the myths of the north. He painted strange, headless men in the forests of the New World. These images served a purpose. They were the sleep of reason. They reminded the navigator that while the map was a tool of logic, the sea remained a place of mystery. To map the world is not to conquer it. It is to enter into a dialogue with it. Piri paused to refill his lamp. The oil was thick and smelled of olives. As the flame flared up, it illuminated the compass roses he had scattered across the parchment. There were 7 of them in total, vast, ornate stars that anchored the geometry of the map. He painted them in gold leaf, using a tiny brush made of squirrel hair. Each point of the star represented a wind, the Tramontane from the north, the Levant from the east, the Sirocco from the south. He imagined the winds as breaths of the earth itself. He saw the world as a giant, living organism that inhaled and exhaled the tides. By drawing the compass roses, he was giving the sailor a way to synchronize his own breath with the breath of the world. Think of the patience required for such a task. To draw a single compass rose took Piri 3 days of unwavering focus. He had to wait for the gold leaf to set, then burnish it with a smooth agate stone until it shone like a mirror. If he breathed too hard, the gold would fly away like dust. He had to be still. He had to be as silent as the gazelle on the plateau. As the night deepened, Piri began to write the inscriptions. These were long, rambling notes written in the margins of the map. They were the voice of the atlas. He wrote about the people of the distant lands, how they dressed, what they ate, how they worshipped. He wrote about the parrots of the west that had feathers of 1,000 colors. He wrote about the Antilles, where the pearls were as large as eggs. His writing was a rhythmic, hypnotic flow of words. He didn't use the harsh language of a conqueror. He used the language of a witness. It is related by the Genoese infidel named Colombo, he wrote, that these lands were found by the help of a book. Piri was weaving the story of Columbus into the fabric of the Ottoman world. He was taking the discoveries of his enemies and turning them into the knowledge of his people. In the quiet of his room, the wars of the Mediterranean faded away. The clash of swords and the roar of cannons were replaced by the gentle scratching of the pen. On this piece of gazelle skin, the world was whole. There was no east or west. There was only the great, curving truth of the earth. The map was becoming a heavy thing, heavy with information, heavy with history. Piri looked at the southern edge of the parchment. There he had drawn a landmass that seemed to connect South America to a great southern continent. Today, we look at this and wonder, how could he have known? Was it a memory of a time before the ice? Or was it simply the artist's intuition, a feeling that the world must have a balance, a weight in the south to counter the weight in the north? The mystery doesn't matter as much as the feeling of a man standing at the center of the world, trying to capture the infinite on a fragment of leather. As you listen to these words, imagine the map lying flat on the cedar table. The ink is still slightly tacky, reflecting the stars that shine through the window. The world is stretching out before you. The mountains are rising, the rivers are flowing, and the great ocean sea is calling. You are no longer in the modern world. You are in the 16th century, in the city of Gallipoli. The air is cool. The night is long. The mapmaker is still working, his hand moving with the grace of a dancer. He is drawing the path for you. He is making sure that when you close your eyes, you are not lost. You are simply on a journey. The gazelle skin holds the world, and now the world holds you. The lines of the map are like the threads of a blanket, wrapping around you, keeping you safe. The compass rose is spinning, slower and slower, until it settles on the point of rest. North, south, east, west, all directions lead to sleep. All winds are falling still. The ink is dry. The map is finished for the night, and so are we. We leave the world map behind now, that vast vision of the distant Atlantic, and we turn our eyes back to the familiar. We return to the blue heart of the world, the sea that Piri Reis knew in his very marrow. This is the story of his life's work, the book that every sailor from the Golden Horn to the Pillars of Hercules would eventually whisper about. He called it the Kitab Baria, the Book of Navigation. Imagine a book so detailed, so thick with the wisdom of the waves, that it felt like holding the Mediterranean itself between two leather covers. It was not a book of poems or laws, though its prose often drifted into the poetic and its rules were absolute. It was a guide for the lost, a hand on the shoulder of a frightened young pilot, guiding him through the fog and jagged teeth of the shore. Piri began this work because he knew that the sea is a shapeshifter. A harbor safe in summer can become a graveyard in winter when the Bora, the north wind, begins to howl. A landmark that looks like a lion from the north might look like a sleeping woman from the south. He understood that to navigate is to remember, since the memory of man is fragile, prone to fading like old ink in the sun. He decided to commit the memory of the sea to the page. Think of the structure of this journey. Piri does not rush. He moves like a slow-moving galley, hugging the coastline, tracing every curve. He begins at the edge of the Dardanelles, the narrow throat of water that connects the Black Sea to the world. He describes the city of Gallipoli. He tells you of the spirit of the place. He tells you of the shipyards, where the scent of fresh cedar sawdust hangs heavy, mixing with boiling pitch and salt spray. He describes the sound of 1,000 hammers striking iron nails, a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat that defines the life of the port. He tells the sailor where the water is deep enough to anchor a heavy warship and where the sand is soft enough to beach a small fishing boat. As we move south with Piri, the air begins to warm. We enter the Aegean, the Aegean Sea. Here, the water is a blue so deep it looks almost black, until the sun hits the crest of a wave and turns it into a spray of diamonds. Piri maps the islands one by one. Tenedos, Mytilene, Chios. For each island, the Kitabu Baria provides a portrait. He draws the island first a bird's eye view, showing the mountains, the fortresses, and the tiny white dots of the windmills on the ridges. Then he provides the sailing directions. This is the part of the script that acts like a lullaby. It is a series of observations, steady and calm. When you approach from the west, he writes, keep the high peak to your starboard side. Look for the white tower on the cliff. Beneath that tower, there is a hidden cove where the north wind cannot reach you. The bottom is good sand. The water is 20 fathoms deep. There is a spring of fresh water near the ancient ruins where your men may drink. Imagine the sailor reading these words by the light of a swaying lantern. The ship is rocking gently creak, SSSSHH, creak, SSSSHH. Piri's voice is there in the text, steadying his hand. He is telling the sailor that he is not alone. Someone has been here before. Someone has measured the depth. Someone has tasted the water. Piri's descriptions are sensory masterpieces. He tells you about the color of the rocks. Some are red, like rusted iron, others white, like sun-bleached bones. He tells you about the smell of a coastline. Long before you see cypress, you can smell the wild jasmine and citrus groves. He tells you to listen for the sound of the surf against the hollow caves of the Levant, a sound like the low growl of a distant beast. He moves us along the coast of Anatolia. We pass the turquoise coast, where mountains fall straight into the sea, their pine-covered slopes casting long emerald shadows over the water. Piri notes the ruins of cities that were old even in his time. He sees the sunken piers of the Greeks and the crumbled amphitheaters of the Romans. To him, these are not just history, they are landmarks. A marble column sticking out of the water is a warning. Stay clear. The water is shallow here. The rhythm of the Kite Barrier is the rhythm of the voyage itself. It is a cycle of tension and release. The tension of the open sea, where the horizon is empty and the stars are the only guide, and the release of the harbor. Piri spends many pages on the great city of Rhodes. He describes the massive walls of the fortress, glowing orange in the setting sun. He maps the harbor of the Mandrake, where the bronze deer stand on their pillars. He tells the pilot how to navigate the narrow entrance, avoiding the hidden rocks that lurk just beneath the surface, like sleeping sharks. Then we sail toward Crete. Piri calls it the Great Island. He describes its long, rugged spine of mountains, the Edi Range, topped with snow, even when the valleys are burning with the heat of July. He talks about the honey of Crete, thick and tasting of thyme, and the wine that is as dark as the sea. He maps the ports of Hania, Chania, and Rethemno, his pen tracing the elegant Venetian arches that line the waterfronts. As the book grows, it becomes a map of the human soul. Piri includes stories. He tells of the Hayam, the folklore of the Mediterranean. He mentions the saints of the sea, holy men whose tombs sit on lonely headlands, watching over the sailors. He writes of the sea monks and the strange lights that dance on the mastheads during a storm what we now call St. Elmo's fire. But what Piri's sailors saw as a sign of divine presence. He moves us toward the coast of Africa, toward the Maghreb. The water here changes. It becomes warmer, more sluggish. The light is different, hazy and golden, filtered through the dust of the desert. He maps the ports of Tunis, and Algiers. These are the strongholds of the Barbary corsairs, the sea-wolves. Piri knew these men. He was one of them in his youth. He describes their hidden bases, the secret lagoons where a galley could be hidden. He tells of the silent trade on the southern shores, where merchants left piles of salt in exchange for gold, never speaking a word. Think of the physical act of creating this book. Piri didn't just write it, he painted it. Every port has its own portolan map. He used a palette of soft, calming colors. The sea is a pale wash of turquoise. The land is a gentle tan. The cities are clusters of red-roofed houses, tiny and perfect, like a toy village. There is something deeply soothing about the order he brings. In a time of religious wars and shifting empires, Piri's book offered a different kind of truth. A reef is a reef. Whether you are a sultan or a king, the wind does not take sides. The Kitabo Bariya was a revolutionary act of sharing knowledge. Before this, maps were state secrets. Piri Reis wanted to give the sea back to the sailors. He wanted to ensure that no man died simply because he didn't know the current. As you listen to the names of these places, Marseille, Marsella, Gen-O-A, Genoa, Venice, Venice, A-Lek-San-Dree-A, Alexandria, let them wash over you. You don't need to know where they are, you only need to feel the movement. We are gliding, we are skimming the surface of history. The ship of our story is moving slowly now, the sails lashing lazily against the mast. The sun is dipping below the horizon, turning the Mediterranean into a sheet of hammered gold. Piri Reis is closing his inkwell. He is wiping his pen on a piece of soft wool. The hundreds of pages of his book are stacked neatly on his desk, a mountain of knowledge that will outlive him by 500 years. He looks out his window at the Dardanelles. The water is silver in the twilight. He knows that tonight, somewhere out there, a pilot is looking at a coastline and feeling a sense of dread. And he knows that tomorrow, that pilot might find a copy of his book. He might find the page that shows that very coast. He might see the note about the White Tower and the hidden spring, and in that moment, the dread will vanish. This is the gift of the mapmaker, to replace fear with understanding, to replace the yawning void with a name and a direction. As we drift into the deeper night, imagine the library of the Topkapi Palace, where the original manuscript of Piri's book was kept. It is a room of silence and shadows. The air is cool and smells of old paper and leather. The book is resting there, its pages closed, but the world it describes is still out there. The waves are still hitting the rocks of Crete. The jasmine is still blooming in Cyprus. The sea doesn't sleep, but we do. The maps are drawn. The harbors are marked. The anchor is set. You are safe in the harbor of the story. The water is 20 fathoms deep. The bottom is good sand. The night is quiet. To understand the world of Piri Reis, one must look upward. While his hand was busy with the earth, the gazelle skin, the oak gall ink, and the jagged coastlines, his eyes were often fixed upon the heavens. In the 16th century, the sea and the sky were two mirrors facing one another, reflecting an infinite blue. To navigate the one, you had to master the other. This was the geometry of the soul, a sacred mathematics that turned the light of distant suns into a path across the trackless waves. Imagine the deck of an Ottoman galley in the middle of the night. The rowing has stopped. The great lateen sails are furled, snapping softly in the midnight breeze. The only sound is the rhythmic slap of the water against the Holshipa sheephand, the low murmur of the night watch. Piri stands at the stern, his feet braced against the rolling motion of the ship. In his hands he holds an astrolabe, a beautiful, heavy disc of solid brass that feels cold against his skin. The astrolabe was more than a tool. It was a universe you could hold in your palm. It was a complex computer of gears and etched lines, representing the movement of the stars as they wheeled across the dome of the night. Piri lifts the instrument, aligning the sight rule with a single steady point of light, the North Star, or, as the sailors called it, the Katub. The North Star is the only thing in the universe that does not move. While the rest of the cosmos dances in a great, slow circle, the Katub remains fixed, a silent anchor in the sky. To the mapmaker, this star was the point of truth. By measuring the angle between the horizon and that star, Piri could determine exactly where he stood on the curve of the earth. He called this the Elma Folok. Think of the stillness required for this measurement. The ship is moving, the water is shifting, and the wind is tugging at your robes. But for a few seconds, you must become as still as a statue. You must breathe out and hold your breath, waiting for the brass needle to settle. In that moment of silence, the sailor is connected to the divine. The mathematics of the star enters the body, travels down the arm, and eventually finds its way into the ink on the page. Piri was a master of the quadrant and the kamal. The kamal was a simple, elegant tula, small rectangular card of wood with a string tied through the center. A sailor would hold the string in his teeth and move the card until it perfectly filled the space between the horizon and the star. Each knot in the string represented a finger of latitude. It was a humble tool, but it was the key to the world. It allowed Piri to map the heights of the cities. He knew that Alexandria sat at a certain height and Istanbul at another. By connecting these heights, he began to draw the invisible grid that holds the world together. As you listen, imagine the sky as Piri saw it. Without the lights of modern cities, the night sky was a terrifying, beautiful explosion of light. The Milky Way was not a faint cloud, but a silver river, the Samanyolu. Piri knew the names of the stars, as if they were his own children. He looked for Altair, the flying eagle. He looked for Fomalhaut, the mouth of the fish. He looked for Aldebaran, the follower. These stars were not just points of light, they were characters in a celestial story. Piri believed that the same laws that governed the stars also governed the human heart. There was a harmony to the universalism. When he sat at his desk in Gelibolu to draw his maps, he was trying to capture that balance. He wasn't just drawing land. He was drawing the order of God. The process of translating the stars to the map was a slow, hypnotic labor. He would use a pair of brass dividers, purge yard, to transfer the measurements. The sound of the metal points clicking against the wood of the table was like the ticking of a cosmic clock. Click, click. Each movement was a step closer to the truth. He used a system of rhumb lines. If you look at the Piri Reis map, you will see a web of lines that cross the ocean like a spider's silk. These lines do not follow the curve of the earth. They follow the direction of the wind. They are the paths. To draw them, Piri had to be a master of the sinus and the tangent. He was using the mathematics of the great scholars of the East, men like Al-Khwarizmi, to solve the riddles of the West. Imagine the concentration. The mapmaker is hunched over, his eyes stinging from the smoke of the oil lamp. He is calculating the departure, the way the distance between the lines of longitude shrinks as you move toward the poles. It is a puzzle that would take centuries to fully solve, but Piri was feeling his way through it with the intuition of a genius. He was a stargazer. Who had salt in his blood? There is a deep peace in this kind of work. It is the peace of certainty. In the world of 1513, everything was uncertain. Empires rose and fell. Sultans were replaced. Plagues swept through the cities. But the stars remained. The North Star was in the same place for Piri as it had been for the ancient Phoenicians. The mathematics didn't change. By anchoring his map to the stars, Piri was creating something that was timeless. He wrote in his book, the Kitab-i-Bari, about the art of the sea. He said that a pilot must be pious, humble, and observant. He believed that a man who was full of pride would never see the truth of the horizon. You had to let go of yourself to see the world. You had to become a vessel for the observations. Think of the tools again, the clepsydra, or the sandglass that measured the watches of the night, the steady fall of the Sanshi-Shishi, marking the passage of time. To map the world, you had to map time itself. Piri knew that a ship's speed was a guess, a dead reckoning. You threw a piece of wood into the water and counted how long it took to pass the hull. It was a rhythm. 1, 2, 3. The map was a synthesis of these rhythms. The rhythm of the sand, the rhythm of the stars, the rhythm of the waves, and the rhythm of the heart. When you look at the elegant curves of the Piri Reis Atlas, you are looking at a heartbeat made visible. As we drift deeper into the night, let your own rhythms slow down. Your breath is like the tide, coming in and going out. Your heart is like the sandglass, steady and calm. The stars are wheeling above you in their long, slow dance. You are safe. You are measured. You are part of the Mison, the great balance of the world. Piri Reis is standing on the shore now, looking out at the dark water of the Aegean. He is not holding a pen or a compass. He is simply watching. He sees the reflection of the Katub star in the black mirror of the sea. He realizes that the map he is making is just a shadow of the real world. But it is a necessary shadow. It is the bridge that allows us to walk through the darkness. The sea is a veil, he might have whispered to himself, and the stars are the needles that sew the veil together. Let the image of the golden astrolabe glow in your mind. See the silver lines of the rum lines stretching out across the ocean. They are not just lines of navigation. They are lines of connection. They connect the sailor to the shore, the man to the star, and the dreamer to the dream. The night is vast, but it is not empty. It is filled with the science of the heavens. It is filled with the names of the stars, Vega, Deneb, Rigel. They are watching over the world, just as they watched over Piri Reis 500 years ago. The sky is a map that never fades. The stars are the ink that never dries. The lamp in the study is flickering out. The mapmaker is leaning back, closing his eyes for a moment. He can feel the rotation of the earth, the slow, heavy turn of the planet beneath his feet. He is not afraid of the dark, for he has the geometry of the soul to guide him, and so do you. The lines are drawn, the stars are set, the world is in its place. Listen to the silence between the stars. It is a deep, velvety silence, like the skin of the gazelle before the ink touches it. It is a silence that invites you to rest. There is no more need for measurement. There is no more need for calculation. The destination has been reached. The horizon is no longer a question. It is a promise. A promise of a new sun, a new day, and a new world. But for now, there is only the night. We leave the salt-cracked decks and the howling winds of the open sea behind. Our journey now takes us toward the center of the world, toward the city that sits like a crown upon two continents. We are sailing into Istanbul. In the 16th century, this was not merely a city, it was the beating heart of an empire that stretched from the sands of Persia to the gates of Vienna. To Piri Reis, returning to the city of the sultans was like a long, deep exhale after a lifetime of holding one's breath. Imagine the approach to the city as the sun begins to rise. The morning mist clings to the water of the Marmara Sea, a soft, gray veil. It slowly thins to reveal the silhouette of 1,000 minarets. They rise like needles of stone, stitching the earth to the sky. As the ship glides forward, the water changes from the deep, wild blue of the Mediterranean to a shimmering liquid gold. This is the Halak, the Golden Horn. It is a natural harbor, so perfect, so sheltered, that it feels as if the land itself has reached out to long arms to embrace the sea. The rhythm of the city is different from the rhythm of the waves. It is a complex, polyphonic sound, a tapestry of life. You hear the distant, melodic call to prayer, the adhan echoing from mosque to mosque, a chain of sound that vibrates in the cool morning air. You hear the rhythmic thud-clack of the wooden oars of the kayak boats, the small, elegant taxis of the water that dart between the heavy galleys like dragonflies. Piri Reis stands at the prow of his vessel. He is no longer just a sailor. He is a messenger. Tucked under his arm, protected by a waterproof tube of stiffened leather, is the result of years of solitude and study. His map of the world. He is heading toward the Topkapi Palace, the Cannon Gate Palace, where the shadow of God, on earth, the Sultan resides. As we walk with Piri through the gates of the palace, the world of salt and spray vanishes. It is replaced by the world of the garden. The Topkapi is a place of absolute, curated silence. The courtyards are lined with ancient cypress trees, their dark green needles standing motionless in the still air. The ground is carpeted with lush grass and flowers whose scents are so thick they feel like a physical weight. Roses, tulips, and the faint, citrusy temps of lemon blossoms. Listen to the sound of the fountains. The Ottomans loved the sound of falling water. In every courtyard there is a shadavan, a fountain where the water trickles and splashes against marble basins. Drip, ripple, splash. This sound was designed to mask the whispers of courtiers and to soothe the mind of the Sultan. To Piri, who had survived the roar of the Bora wind, this controlled water felt like a miracle. He passes through the gate of salutations. Here, the walls are covered in Iznik tiles, vibrant blues, deep reds, and shimmering whites. The patterns on the tiles are like the patterns on his maps, geometric, repetitive, and infinite. Tulips and carnations wind around one another in a dance of clay and glaze. Piri looks at the patterns and sees the same mathematics he used to calculate the stars. He realizes that the palace is just another kind of map, a map of power, a map of paradise. He is led into the divan, the council chamber. The air here is cool and smells of expensive incense and ambergris. The floor is covered in thick, silken carpets from Herat, their intricate weaves muffling every footstep. There is no sound here but the rustle of silk robes and the scratching of the scribes' pens. It is the same sound Piri makes in his study, but here the pens are writing the history of nations. Finally, he stands before Sultan Selim. The Sultan is a man of iron will, a conqueror who has doubled the size of the empire. But he is also a poet and a lover of geography. Piri unrolls the gazelle skin upon the marble table. Imagine the scene. The map, with its vibrant lapis lazuli oceans and its golden compass roses, glows in the soft light of the council chamber. The Sultan leans forward. His eyes travel across the coast of Africa, across the ocean sea, and settle upon the strange, reaching fingers of the New World. In this moment, the room feels as if it is expanding. The walls of the palace seem to fall away, and the vastness of the earth pours in. Piri begins to speak. His voice is low and steady, the voice of a man who has seen the horizon and returned to tell the tale. He explains the heights of the stars, the lost map of the Genoese infidel, and the way the winds breathe across the Atlantic. "My Sultan," he might have whispered, "the world is larger than we dreamed, but it is all within your grasp. For what is mapped is known, and what is known is mastered." The Sultan touches the parchment. His finger traces the line of the equator. He feels the texture of the gazelle skin, the same skin that once ran across the plains of Anatolia. He realizes that this map is a bridge. It connects the Ottoman world to the mysteries of the West. It is a weapon of knowledge. But even here, in the heart of the empire, there is a sense of the yawning void. The Sultan knows, as Piri knows, that power is like the tide. It comes in with a roar, and it goes out with a sigh. The map is an attempt to freeze time, to hold on to the world as it is in this perfect, fleeting moment. As the meeting ends, Piri is dismissed with honors. He walks back through the silent courtyards, his heart light. He has done his duty. He has given the world back to his king. But as he reaches the outer walls and looks back at the Golden Horn, he sees the sun setting behind the dome of the Hagia Sophia. The massive building turns into a dark, purple mountain against the orange sky. He realizes that the city of Istanbul is also a map. The streets are the rum lines. The mosques are the compass roses. The people are the ships, drifting through the currents of history. And just like the sea, the city has its own depths, its own hidden rocks, and its own sudden storms. As you listen to the description of this golden city, let your mind drift into the stillness of the palace gardens. Imagine yourself sitting by the Shattervan, watching the water rise and fall. The air is cool. The scent of the roses is lulling you into a state of deep peace. You are far away from the wars and the politics. You are in the cradle of the empire. The city is settling down for the night. The fires in the hearths are being banked. The lamps in the minarets are being lit, looking like a second set of stars hovering over the city. The Golden Horn is becoming a dark mirror, reflecting the lights of the Galata Tower. Piri Reis returns to his ship. He prefers the cabin to the palace. He prefers the smell of salt to the smell of incense. He lies down on his narrow cot, the sound of the water against the hull returning him to his natural rhythm. He thinks of the map he just gave away. He knows he will make another. He knows the Kitaboy Bari is still growing in his mind. The world is a book, he thinks, as he closes his eyes. And those who do not travel read only a page. But tonight he is finished traveling. He is in the heart of the harbor. The anchors are deep in the silt of the Horn. The ship is safe. The empire is vast. The night is quiet. Listen to the distant sound of the city. It is a low hum, a collective breathing of a million souls. It is the sound of the hive. It is a comforting sound, a reminder that you are not alone in the vastness of the world. But here, in the cabin of the ship, you are tucked away. You are in the shadow of the Sultan, protected and still. The water goes lap-lap, lap-lap against the timber. The wood creaks with the familiarity of an old friend. The stars above Istanbul are the same stars that Piri measured in the middle of the ocean. They are steady. They are unchanging. North, south, east, west. The city is the center. The palace is the heart, and you are at rest. The ink is dry on the Sultan's map. The gold leaf is shimmering in the dark. The world is mapped, and for now, the world is at peace. We step away from the marble silence of the palace and return to the wooden world of the Kadirga Ottoman galley. To understand the maps of Piri Reis, one must understand the vessel that moved the pen across the sea. A galley was not just a ship, it was a living, breathing organism of wood, rope, and human effort. It was a place of intense, repetitive rhythm, where time was marked by the stroke of the oar and the snap of the sail. Imagine the Kadirga at dawn, long and slender, sitting low in the water like a predatory fish. On the deck, a profound stillness before day begins. Mist settles on the heavy sweeps like legs of a centipede. The rhythm begins with the vardayan, the bosun. He uses a drum and his voice. Listen to the first beat. Boom, boom. The rowers, 3 or 4, to a bench, lean forward in unison, gripping the smooth, salt-hardened wood. Boom. They pull, oars bite into glassy water with a synchronized splash. The ship surges forward. SSSHH, water hisses along the hull. Boom. They lean back. SSSHH, they pull again. This is the heartbeat of the galley. For Piri Reis, this rhythm was the metronome of his life. When he was mapping a coastline, he would often count the strokes to estimate the distance. If a galley moved at 4 knots, and rowers pulled 20 strokes a minute, he could calculate the length of a bay. The map was born from the sweat and the cadence of the oars. Think of the repetition. Hour after hour, the motion remains the same. The rowers enter a state of oar-trance. Their minds drift away from the labor, focused only on the back of the man in front and the steady beat of the drum. It is a form of meditation, forced by necessity, but leading to a strange, shared peace. The world narrows down to the breath, the wood, and the water. When the wind rises, the rhythm shifts, the drum falls silent. The vardayan gives the order to raise the lateen. The sailors scramble up the rigging with the agility of cats. They unfurl the great triangular sails, the yelkin, which are as white as the wings of a swan. Listen to the sound of the canvas catching the wind. A sudden, muffled thump, followed by the taut, singing vibration of the ropes. Now, the ship is powered by the breath of the earth. The oars are pulled in, dripping silver water, and the galley tilts slightly to one side. The sound of the rowing is replaced by the song of the rigging. It is a high-pitched, melodic creaking. The sound of hemp rope rubbing against cedar wood. It is a soothing, ancient music. Piri Reis would lie in his cabin and listen to this song, knowing exactly how much pressure the wind was putting on the mast. The ship speaks to those who listen, Piri wrote. It tells you when it is happy, and it warns you when it is tired. Life on the Kadirga was governed by the watches. The day was divided into 4-hour segments, creating a circular loop of existence. There was the dawn watch, the dog watch, and the middle watch. Each transition was marked by the turning of the cum-sa-a-titha sandglass. Imagine the sandglass hanging in the steerage. The grains of sand are fine and white, falling in a silent, steady stream. There is something deeply calming about the sight of falling sand. It is the visible measurement of life. When the last grain falls, the bell is struck a clear, silver tone that carries across the silent water. The watch changes. One group of men goes to sleep. Another wakes to the stars. The food on the galley followed its own rhythmic pattern. There was the pexametta hard, twice-baked bread that lasted for months. The sailors would soak it in water or vinegar to soften it, a repetitive ritual of the midday meal. They ate olives, dried figs, and sujex pisces sausage that hung in the rafters of the galley, filling the air with the scent of garlic and cumin. This scent, mixed with the smell of salt and pine tar, created the perfume of the sea. As we sail through the night with Piri, imagine the sleep of the sailor. On a galley, there were no private cabins for the crew. They slept where they sat, or on the narrow gangway called the kurdalo. They wrapped themselves in heavy wool cloaks, and used their arms as pillows. The motion of the ship became their cradle. The rhythmic rocking, the pitch and roll, is the most natural lullaby. It mimics the movement of a mother's heartbeat. Piri Reis understood that a rested crew was a safe crew. In his Kitab Bari, he notes the best places to drop anchor just for the sake of the long sleep. He describes coves in the Adriatic where the water is as still as a mirror and the mountains block out the noise of the world. In such a place, he writes, a man may sleep so deeply that he forgets he is immortal. He becomes part of the stone and the water. Let your mind drift into that state now. Imagine you are lying on the deck of the Kadirga. The oars are stowed, the sails are furled. The ship is anchored in a hidden bay off the coast of Lyphia. The air is cool, carrying the scent of pine needles. The only sound is the rhythmic clink-clink of the anchor chain and the occasional splash of a nocturnal fish. The stars above are so bright they cast shadows on the deck. Piri Reis is at his small table, but he is not drawing. He is watching the moon rise over the jagged cliffs. The moon is a silver coin, casting a path of light across the water, a path that looks like it's made of crushed silk. He thinks of the thousands of men who have lived and died on these ships. He thinks of the rowers whose names are never recorded on the maps. He realizes that the galley is a microcosm of the world. It is a small, wooden island of order in a vast sea of chaos. And the key to that order is the rhythm. Boom, SSSSHH pa. Boom, SSSSHH pa. The rhythm of the oar becomes the rhythm of your breath. The rhythm of the sandglass becomes the rhythm of your heart. The rhythm of the waves becomes the rhythm of your thoughts. You are moving forward, but you are not moving at all. You are suspended in the eternal present of the sea. The shore of yesterday is gone. The shore of tomorrow is not yet visible. There is only the wooden deck beneath you and the stars above. Piri Reis blows out his candle. The smell of the burnt wick, the blue smoke, lingers for a moment before the sea breeze carries it away. He wraps his cloak around his shoulders and closes his eyes. He doesn't need a map to find his way to sleep. He simply listens to the ship. The Kadirga is a ghost ship now, moving through the silver mist of your imagination. It carries no cargo but dreams. It carries no passengers but memories. The rowers are silent. The drum is still. The wind is a whisper. As the ship rocks you, feel the tension leaving your muscles. Your hands, which have been gripping the oars of your daily worries, are now open and relaxed. Your feet, which have been bracing against the storms of your life, are now still. You are floating. The water of the Mediterranean is deep and ancient. It has held the weight of 1,000,000 ships, and it holds you now. It is a supportive, buoyant darkness, Cispa. The sound of the sea is the last thing you hear. It is the sound of the beginning and the sound of the end. It is the voice of the mapmaker, telling you that the journey is over for today. The harbor is reached. The anchor is set. The watch is ended. Sleep now in the heart of the galley. Sleep in the shadow of the sail. Sleep on the bosom of the middle sea. To find the future of the world, Piri Reis had to travel deep into the past. While he was a man of the sea, he was also a man of the scroll. He knew the maps he drew were not his alone. They were echoes of 1,000 years of human curiosity. To create his masterwork, he became a detective of shadows, a seeker of voices silenced by centuries of dust. He had to find fragments of lost knowledge, ancient maps that survived wars, fires, and time's rot. Imagine a room in Alexandria. The air, dry and heavy, smells of old parchment, cedar oil, and dried papyrus. This is a place of absolute, heavy silence. Outside, Egypt's sun beats down, but inside, light is dim and golden. Piri walks through aisles of a hidden library, footsteps muffled by thick rugs. He is looking for the Ptolemaic tradition. Ptolemy lived 1,400 years before Piri, a scholar who tried to capture Earth's sphere on a flat surface. To Piri, Ptolemy was not a ghost. He was a teacher, guiding his scholarly journey. Think of the scholar's patience. Piri reaches for a scroll. The parchment is brittle, its edges curled like a dying rose. He unrolls it slowly, mindful that a careless breath could turn a century of knowledge into dust. As the scroll opens, he sees the world as the ancients saw it. It is a world where the Indian Ocean is landlocked and the mountains of the moon are the source of the Nile. But Piri does not look for mistakes. He looks for truths. He looks at how the ancients calculated Earth's circumference using only a stick's shadow in a well. He admires the circumference. These men, without compasses or telescopes, felt the world's curvature in their souls. The ancients had eyes that could see through the dark, Piri whispered to himself. We have the tools, but they had the vision. As we sit with Piri in this quiet room, let the rhythm of the library settle over you. It is a rhythm of stillness. The world outside does not exist here. There is only the scholar, the scroll, and the steady, rhythmic movement of the dust motes. Piri begins to compare his sources. He has 20 maps on his table. Some are Arab charts from the Abbasid caliphs, filled with intricate calligraphy and jewel-toned inks. Others are portolans from the merchants of Venice, focused only on the practicalities of trade. And then there are the secret maps, the ones smuggled out of the courts of Portugal and Spain. He is stitching the world. This is the most hypnotic part of his labor. He takes a measurement from an ancient Greek map and compares it to a modern Portuguese chart. He sees where they agree and where they clash. It is a puzzle of infinite complexity. He uses his Purjar compasses, the brass tips, walking across the parchment like the feet of a tiny, silent bird. Tap, tap, tap. Imagine the sound of the pen in this silent room. It is a different sound than on the ship. Here, the ink is not blacker than the sea. It is as brown as the earth. It is sepia ink. As Piri draws, he is not just marking land, he is resurrecting it. He is bringing the lost coastlines of the ancients back into the light. He writes in the Kitabwai Bari book of navigation about the duty of the scholar. He says that knowledge is a trust. You do not own a map. You merely look after it for the next generation. This sense of continuity is a powerful sedative for the mind. It tells us we are part of a long, unbroken chain. We are not lost in time, we are anchored to it. Think of the deep history that Piri was uncovering. He found maps that showed the world as it was before the Great Flood. He found charts that suggested the existence of a southern land, a terra australis, long before any ship had sailed there. He didn't dismiss these as legends. He treated them as echoes. A map is a memory that refuses to die, he wrote. As the hours pass in the library, the light changes. The golden beam moves across the floor. The air grows cooler. Piri's eyes are tired, but his heart is full. He has found the coordinate. He has found the point where the ancient world meets the new. In his 1513 map, he includes a note about these sources. He tells the reader that he has used the maps of the age of Alexander the Great. By doing this, he was claiming a lineage. He was saying that the Ottoman Empire was the true heir to the wisdom of the Greeks and the Romans. But on a deeper level, he was simply acknowledging his debt to the past. Listen to the silence again. It is a layered silence. There is the silence of the room, the silence of the scrolls, and the silence of the men who wrote them. Thousands of years of thought are concentrated into this one small space. Piri Reis closes his eyes and leans back in his chair. He can feel the weight of the ages. It is a heavy, comforting weight, like a thick wool blanket. He realizes that he is never truly alone in his study. He is surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, the astronomers of Baghdad, the sailors of Phoenicia, the librarians of Alexandria. They are all whispering the same thing: measure, record, remember. The map is a prayer against forgetting. It is a way of saying, we were here, we saw this. This is the truth of the world. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine your own mind as a library. All the experiences of your day, all the thoughts and worries are like scrolls. But tonight, you are the librarian. You are not here to read them or to judge them. You are here to simply shelve them. One by one, you take the scrolls of your day and place them on the high shelves. You do it with a slow, rhythmic movement. Reach, place, rest, reach, place, rest. The shelves are long and deep, made of dark, fragrant cedar. There is plenty of room. The library of your mind is becoming quiet. The windows are dark now, reflecting the stars. The sepia ink of your thoughts is drying. The Perger compasses are back in their velvet-lined box. The lost knowledge of your day is safe. It will be there tomorrow if you need it, but for now, it is tucked away in the shadows. Piri Reis is leaving the library now. He walks out into the cool Egyptian night. The stars are enormous, hanging over the Pharos lighthouse like celestial lanterns. He feels a sense of profound connection. He is a small man on a small planet, but he has held the universe in his hands. He walks back toward the harbor, the sound of his footsteps echoing on the ancient stones. Clack, clack, clack. It is the sound of time. It is a sound that tells you that everything is in its place. The past is behind you, the future is ahead of you, and the present is a gift of stillness. The Mediterranean is waiting for him. The Kadirga is bobbing gently in the harbor, its masts swaying against the stars. Piri returns to the water, but he carries the library with him. He carries the memory of the earth. As he falls asleep in his cabin, he dreams of the scrolls. He dreams of the lines of latitude and longitude, turning into golden threads that weave the world together. He dreams of the great synthesis, where all maps become one map, and all journeys lead to the same destination. Sleep now in the silence of the scrolls. Sleep in the shadows of the ancient library. Sleep in the memory of the earth. The ink is dry. The world is remembered. The library is closed. We have looked at the stars, and we have listened to the winds, but now we must descend. We must look beneath the shimmering skin of the sea to the invisible rivers, the great currents of the Mediterranean. To Piri Reis, the sea was never a static pool of water. It was a moving, breathing, surging body of liquid energy. It was a blue highway that could carry a ship toward its destiny with the speed of a galloping horse, or hold it back in a frustrating, watery embrace. Imagine the Mediterranean as a giant basin, slightly tilted toward the east. At the far western edge, where the pillars of Hercules stand like silent sentinels, the vast Atlantic pours in. This is the fresh breath of the ocean. It is a surface current, a powerful, salt-heavy stream of water that rushes through the narrow straits and begins a long, clockwise journey around the entire sea. Piri Reis understood this circulation. He spent years observing the way a piece of driftwood or seaweed moved. He realized that the sea has a pulse. If you drop a leaf in the water off the coast of Algiers, the sea will carry it toward Tunis, then down toward the delta of the Nile, and finally back up along the coast of Levant. It is a never-ending loop, a rhythmic journey that has been repeating for millions of years. Think of the sound of this current. It is not the crashing sound of a wave on the beach. It is a deeper, more subtle sound, a low-frequency thrum that you feel in the soles of your feet on deck. It is the sound of 1,000,000,000,000 tons of water moving in unison. It is a liquid silence. As we sail with Piri, notice how he uses these currents in the Kitab-i-Bari, his book of navigation. He doesn't just tell you to steer north or south. He tells you to feel the lean of the sea. He describes the Anatolian current, which flows strongly from the east to the west along the southern coast of Turkey. He calls it a friendly giant. If a captain knows how to hitch his ship to this current, he can travel 100 miles in a day without even a whisper of wind in his sails. But for every friendly giant, there is a hidden snare. Piri warns of the Euripus Strait near Euboea. Here, the currents are so chaotic, so violent, that they change direction 7 times a day. The water churns and boils, creating whirlpools that look like giant, spinning silver coins. Piri describes the sound of these whirlpools as a hissing prayer. To navigate them, you must have a heart of stone and a hand of iron. You must wait for the slack water, that brief, magical moment of absolute stillness, when the tide is turning and the sea forgets which way it is moving. The slack water is the most peaceful moment in the world of the mapmaker. It is a moment of perfect mise-en balance. The tension of the pull vanishes. The ship sits perfectly upright, as if it were resting on a sheet of glass. In this silence, Piri would lower his lead line. The iskandila was a simple weight of lead, shaped like a bell, attached to a long, knotted rope. At the bottom of the lead, there was a hollow filled with tallow animal fat. Piri would drop the lead into the deep, watching the rope snake down into the blue darkness. Zzz, plop. Imagine the rope sliding through your fingers. It is cold and wet. You count the knots as they disappear. 1, 5, 10, 20 fathoms. When the lead hits the bottom, you feel a faint thud travel up the line. When you pull it back up, the tallow has captured a sample of the hidden world. If the tallow is covered in fine white sand, Piri marks the spot on his map as a good bed. If it brings up jagged pieces of black rock, he marks it with a cross of warning. If it brings up red coral or tiny, colorful shells, he knows he is in the gardens of the sea. This was the blind mapping of the deep. Piri was drawing a world he could never see with his eyes, but could only feel through the vibrations of a rope. He was mapping the submerged mountains and the abyssal plains. To him, the floor of the Mediterranean was as rugged and beautiful as the mountains of the Taurus. As you listen to the description of the falling lead, let your own mind sink into a state of relaxation. Imagine yourself as that lead weight, slowly drifting down through the cool, clear layers of the water. The surface of the sea, with its noise and its winds, is getting further and further away. The light is changing from bright gold to a soft, shimmering turquoise, and finally to a deep, velvety indigo. The pressure of the water is like a gentle, all-encompassing hug. It is a heavy stillness. Down here, there are no storms, there are no wars. There is only the slow, rhythmic pulse of the deep currents, the undertow that connects the continents. Piri Reis wrote about the deep waters with a sense of awe. He believed that the Mediterranean had two faces, the one that reflects the sun and the one that holds the secrets of the dead. He mapped the graveyards of ships, the places where the currents naturally deposit the wrecks of the past. He saw the sea as a vast coffin of history, but also as a womb of life. The rhythm of the water is the rhythm of your own circulation. Your blood is a salty sea, flowing through the highways of your veins, carrying the fresh breath of life to every corner of your body. Just as the Mediterranean is renewed by the Atlantic, you are renewed by your breath. Listen to the slap-slap of the water against the hull again. It is a liquid applause. It is the sea saying thank you to the man who took the time to measure it. Piri Reis is back in his cabin, the iskandela coiled neatly in the corner. He is looking at his map of the currents. He has drawn them as flowing, curving lines of blue ink, swirling like the hair of a mermaid. These lines are the spirit of the sea. Without them, the map would be a dead thing. With them, it is a living map of motion. He thinks of the river of time. He realizes that he is just a passenger on a current that started long before he was born, and will continue long after he is gone. This realization brings him a sense of profound peace. He doesn't need to fight the current. He only needs to understand it. The wise sailor, Piri wrote, does not row against the sea. He finds the current that is going his way and lets it carry him home. As we drift toward the end of this chapter, let the current of the story carry you. You don't need to row. You don't need to steer. You are in the flow. The blue highway is wide and smooth. It is taking you toward the harbor of dreams. The water is becoming warmer now as we move toward the southern shores of the Maghreb. The sun is setting and the sea glow, the Yakamos phosphorescence, is beginning to appear. The currents look like rivers of liquid light flowing through the dark ocean. Piri Reis closes his eyes. He can feel the lean of the ship as it rounds a headland, caught in the grip of a powerful, steady stream. He smiles. He knows where he is. He knows the pulse of the earth. You are safe in the pulse. You are steady in the flow. You are at rest in the deep. The lead has hit the bottom. The tallow is clean. The bed is soft sand. The night is moving, but you are still. The sea is surging, but you are at peace. The current is taking you, and you are letting it go. Sleep now in the invisible rivers. Sleep in the liquid silence. Sleep on the blue highway. As we move deeper into the night, the vast open horizon of the Mediterranean begins to break. The deep water is replaced by the comforting emerald silhouettes of the great islands. To Piri Reis, these islands were not merely obstacles in the water. They were the gardens of the sea. In his Kitab-i-Bari, he describes them with a tenderness that borders on the holy. He saw them as sanctuaries of stone and scent, where the harsh salt of the voyage was tempered by the sweetness of the earth. Imagine the island of Rhodes as the sun begins to dip. The air here is different. It is no longer just the smell of brine and tar. As the ship draws closer to the shore, a heavy, fragrant wave of perfume rolls out to meet you. It is the scent of wild rosemary, of crushed thyme, and the deep, resinous musk of the mastic trees. This is the breath of the island, a rhythmic exhalation of the soil that tells a sailor he is home. Piri Reis loved the geometry of Rhodes. He mapped its massive, honey-colored walls with the eye of an architect. He describes the way the stones of the fortress were cut smooth, heavy blocks of limestone that have stood against 1,000 storms and 12 sieges. Listen to the sound of the water in the harbor of Mandrake. It is a sheltered, rhythmic chime. The waves do not crash here. They nuzzle the stone piers. Lap chime, lap. He draws the deer, standing on their pillars at the harbor entrance. He tells the pilot of the hidden springs that bubble up near the shore, providing water so cold and pure it feels like liquid ice against a parched throat. To map an island, Piri believed, you had to map its thirst. You had to know where the water hid in the limestone. As the ship moves east, we come to the jewel of the Levant Cyprus. Piri calls it the island of the Copper Mountains. Here, the rhythm of the land is dominated by the cicadas. Imagine the sound of 10 million tiny wings vibrating in the heat of the afternoon. It is a high-pitched electric thrum that never stops. It is the heartbeat of the summer. To the sailor lying on the deck in the lee of the island, this sound becomes a wall of white noise, a sonic blanket that drowns out the worries of the world. Piri describes the salt lakes of Larnaca. In the summer, the water evaporates, leaving behind a crust of salt, so white it looks like a field of fallen snow. He maps the gleaming surface, warning the sailor that from a distance, the salt can look like a harbor, a mirage of white stone that has lured many a tired captain onto the shallows. But the most sleepy of all his descriptions are the tiny, nameless islets of the Adriatic and the Aegean. He calls them the scattered pearls. These are islands so small that they have no cities, no fortresses, and no names on the maps of the kings. But in the Kitab-i-Bari, they are given a voice. He describes an island near the coast of Lycia. It is nothing more than a spine of gray rock rising out of the turquoise water. But Piri notes that on the southern side there is a perfect cove. The water here is only 5 fathoms deep, and the bottom is covered in seagrass, the Posidonia. Imagine looking down over the side of the boat into this water. The seagrass moves with the current like a slow-motion field of wheat. Sway, pause, sway. It is a green, rhythmic dance that never ends. The light of the sun reaches the bottom in long, shimmering fingers of gold, the caustic patterns of the water. These patterns move across the sand in a mesmerizing, repetitive loop. Piri would sit for hours watching these lines, trying to understand the optics of the ocean. In these gardens of the sea, the passage of time feels different. On the open ocean, time is a line, a distance to be covered. But on the islands, time is a circle. It is the circle of the sun rising over the mountain and setting behind the sea. It is the circle of the seasons, from the blooming of the anemones in the spring to the harvest of the carob pods in the autumn. Piri Reis wrote that an island is a world that has forgotten the rest of the world. When you are anchored in a cove, the great empire of the Ottomans feels like a dream. The wars of the sultans are just a distant thunder. There is only the rock, the scent of the herbs, and the rhythmic lap-lap of the water. Let your mind become like one of these islands. You are surrounded by a sea of thoughts, but tonight the water is calm. The currents of the day are not reaching your shores. You are a sanctuary of stillness. Imagine the scent of the garden now. It is the smell of sun-baked earth. It is the smell of wild sage and the sharp, clean aroma of pine needles. Take a deep breath of this imaginary air. It is heavy and warm. It fills your lungs with the essence of the earth. Listen to the sounds of the island night. The cicadas have fallen silent, replaced by the soft, rhythmic hoot of a shop's owl. It is a short, musical note that repeats every few seconds. Hoot, 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 hoot. It is a sound of watchfulness, but also of peace. It tells you that the island is awake, even while it sleeps. Piri Reis is in his cabin, but the window is open to the island air. He is not working on the world map tonight. He is sketching a view from the sea. He draws the way the olive trees look like silver puffs of smoke against the dark hillside. He draws the way the moon reflects off the white marble ruins of an ancient temple on the headland. He realizes that the beauty of the islands is their impermanence. The ruins were once great cities. Now they are just landmarks for sailors. The trees will fall, and the rocks will eventually be ground into sand by the sea. But for tonight, they are solid, they are real, they are a place to rest. The sailor who loves the sea must also love the land, Piri wrote. For the sea is the journey, but the land is the meaning. As we drift toward the end of this chapter, feel the solidity of the earth beneath your imagination. You are no longer floating in the deep. You are anchored to the garden. The roots of the island go deep into the floor of the Mediterranean, holding you steady against the turn of the world. The water of the cove is as still as a mirror. The ship doesn't even rock. It just sits there, suspended in a liquid silence. The reflection of the stars on the surface is so perfect you cannot tell where the sea ends and the sky begins. Piri Reis puts down his charcoal. He wipes his hands on a cloth that smells of lavender. He is ready for the long sleep. He knows that tomorrow the wind will return and the Meltemi will carry him back into the blue. But for now, he is a guest of the island. You are a guest of the island, too. The scent of the herbs is your blanket. The song of the owl is your lullaby. The lap-lap of the water is your heartbeat. Sleep now in the garden of the islands. Sleep on the fragrant shores. Sleep in the cradle of the cove. The anchor is deep. The wind is still. The garden is waiting. We have reached the deepest part of the journey, the hour of the silent watch. In the world of the Ottoman Navy, this was the time between the second call to prayer and the first hint of gray on the horizon. It is the time when the universe seems to contract, when the vastness of the Mediterranean is reduced to the small, glowing circle of a single lamp. To Piri Reis, this was the hour of total surrender. It was the moment when the mapmaker stopped trying to command the world, and instead allowed the world to command him. Imagine the cabin of the ship once more. The air is cold now, the sharp, clean cold of the high sea. On the desk, the Kitab-i-Bari book of navigation lies open, but the ink is dry. The pens are cleaned. The brass dividers are resting in their velvet bed. The work of the day is finished. Piri Reis sits in the stillness, his hands resting palms up on his knees. He is practicing the geometry of the night. This is not the mathematics of the stars or the measurement of the coastlines. It is the geometry of inner space. He is aligning his own breathing with the slow, heavy rise and fall of the dark water beneath the hull. Listen to the ship in this ultimate silence. Every timber has a voice, but at this hour they only whisper. The creak groan, sigh of the oak beams is a slow-motion conversation. The ship is settling into the water, finding its trim. It is no longer a vessel of war or a tool of science. It is a floating cradle. Piri listens to the drip, drip of the condensation from the rudder post. It is a steady, liquid metronome, marking a time that has no beginning and no end. He thinks of the dark map, the map of the things we cannot see. He realizes that for every island he has drawn, there is a mountain beneath the waves that remains hidden. For every wind he has named, there is a silence that he cannot capture. The yawning void that he feared as a young sailor has become his friend. It is the emptiness that allows the map to exist. Without the white space of the parchment, there would be no room for the ink. In this silent watch, the sense of self begins to fade. Piri Reis is no longer a famous admiral, or a brilliant cartographer, or a nephew of the great Kemal. He is simply a witness. He is a point of consciousness in a vast, dark sea. He feels the curvature of the earth. He can sense the planet spinning on its axis. A silent, majestic rotation that carries him through the velvet night. He looks out of the small, square porthole. The stars are different now. They have moved across the sky, following their predestined paths. The Katab, the North Star, is still there, but it seems softer, less like a tool and more like a companion. The Milky Way, the Samanjolu path of the straw sellers, is a river of silver dust flowing directly into the sea. Piri imagines that the water and the stars are made of the same substance. He feels a sense of unity. The map is not the world, he whispered to the darkness. The map is only the bridge, and tonight I have crossed the bridge. Think of the fading of detail. This is the most hypnotic part of the night. As the lamp burns lower, the sharp lines of the maps begin to blur. The jagged coastlines of Crete and Cyprus soften into gentle curves. The red and gold of the compass roses turn to shades of gray. The world is losing its edges. It is becoming a singularity. One thing, one darkness, one peace. As you listen to these words, let your own world lose its edges. The worries of your life, the coastlines of your responsibilities, softening. The lines of your thoughts are blurring. You are entering the silent watch. There is nothing you need to measure. There is nothing you need to record. There is no point of truth you need to find, because you are already there. You are at the center of your own map. Piri Reis stands up slowly, his movements fluid and heavy, like someone moving through water. He goes to the deck for one last look at the night. The sea is pointillist, tonight covered in 10 billion tiny reflections of the stars. The water is so dark and so still that the ship seems to be floating in the center of a sphere of light. He feels the coolness of the night air on his face. It is a dry, clean cold that smells of nothingness. It is the smell of the void, and it is beautiful. he realizes that the great mystery of the sea is not that it can be mapped, but that it can never be fully known. There will always be a beyond. There will always be a hidden depth, and in that realization, there is a profound relief. He doesn't have to know everything. He can just be. He returns to his cot. He doesn't light a new lamp. He lies down in the absolute dark. He can feel the heartbeat of the Mediterranean coming through the hull. THOOMP-she. THOOMP-she. It is the sound of the world's ancient engine, running on the fuel of the tides and the moon. He wraps his heavy wool cloak around him. It is warm and smells of history, of the salt of 1,000 voyages and the ink of 1,000 maps. It is a heavy comfort. As he closes his eyes, he sees the glistening lines of his world map one last time. But they are not made of ink anymore. They are made of light. They are filaments of gold, weaving together the people he has met, the places he has seen, and the stars he has followed. The map is breathing with him. Inhale, the lines stretch. Exhale, the lines relax. He is mapping the dream. In this state, he can sail to the lands that don't exist yet. He can see the Antarctica without its ice. He can see the cities of the future rising from the shores he has drawn. He is no longer bound by the limits of the 16th century. He is a voyager of time. As you drift toward the end of this chapter, feel the surrender. You are letting go of the purger. You are letting go of the Callum pen. You are letting go of the Pasula compass. You don't need a direction anymore, because there is nowhere else to go. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. The ship is held in the palm of the sea. The stars are held in the palm of the sky, and you are held in the palm of the night. The silent watch is ending, but it is not becoming day. It is becoming eternity. The rhythm of the ship is the only thing left. Creak, sigh, rest, creak, sigh, rest. The water of the Mediterranean is a soothing darkness. It is the ink of the infinite, and you are a single drop of water within it. You are safe. You are anonymous. You are at peace. Piri Reis is asleep now. His breath is a slow, steady, meltamy wind, moving through the quiet cabin. His dreams are atlases of the soul, filled with vibrant colors and perfect geometries. He has found the harbor of harbors. You are in that harbor too. The geometry of the night is complete. The silent watch is over. The world is mapped, and the map is tucked away. Sleep now in the heavy stillness. Sleep in the shadow of the star. Sleep in the emptiness of the map. The night is deep. The voyage is done. The silence is yours. We have traveled from the yawning void of the first gazelle skin to the silent watch of the deep Mediterranean. We have followed the pen of Piri Reis as it danced across the page, stitching together the stars, the winds, and the memories of 1,000 sailors. Now the map is finished. The ink has aged from a wet, glistening black to a deep, earthy charcoal. The world that Piri drew, the world of galleys, sultan conquerors, and secret maps, has slowly dissolved into the mist of time. But the eternal horizon remains. Imagine the passing of the centuries as a series of slow, rhythmic waves. One century rolls in and rolls out. Another follows. The Ottoman Empire, once so vast and solid, begins to fade like a watercolor left in the sun. The great palace of Topkapi becomes a museum, a house of echoes and shadows. And in the year 1929, in a quiet, dusty corner of that palace, a scholar reaches into a bundle of old documents and pulls out a fragment of parchment. It is the map of 1513. Listen to the sound of the parchment being unrolled after 400 years of sleep. Crack, crinkle. It is a dry, ancient sound, like the breaking of a spell. As the light of the modern world hits the gazelle skin, the colors seem to wake up. The lapis lazuli blue of the Atlantic, the vibrant reds of the compass roses, the delicate gold leaf, they are all still there. They have survived the rot of time. They have survived the fire of war. They have waited in the dark for us to find them. Piri Reis is long gone. His body returned to the earth of Gelibolu, but his eye is still open. Through this map, we see the world as he saw it, a place of mystery and connection. We see the lost map of Columbus, preserved in the lines of an Ottoman admiral. We see the coast of the New World, drawn with a precision that still baffles the scientists of our time. Think of the resonance of this discovery. When the map was found, it sent a shockwave through the world. It reminded us that history is not a straight line, but a spiral. It reminded us that the Middle Ages were not dark, but filled with the brilliant light of scholars who looked at the stars and saw a map. Piri Reis became a bridge once again, not just between the East and the West, but between the past and the present. As we sit with this legacy, let the rhythm of the centuries settle your mind. You are no longer in the 16th century, but you are not quite in the 21st either. You are in the timeless state of the historian. You are looking at the full arch of human endeavor. Piri's book, the Kitab-i-Bari, is now found in libraries across the globe. Its pages are touched by the gloved hands of researchers who marvel at the glistening details of the harbors. They look at the profile of the land and realize that even today, the mountains of Crete look exactly as Piri drew them. The sea has changed, the ships have changed, but the bone of the earth remains the same. The earth is the only truth, Piri might have said. The rest is just ink. Imagine the life of the map in the modern world. It has been digitized, scanned by lasers, and projected onto screens. It has been debated by colonels and dreamed about by poets. But in the middle of the night, when the museums are closed and the lasers are turned off, the map returns to its natural state. It returns to the silence. It returns to the shadows of the palace. The gazelle skin remembers the animal it once was. It remembers the salt air of the Dardanelles. It remembers the scratch of the reed pen. And it remembers the man who sat hunched over the desk, breathing life into the yawning void. Piri Reis's legacy is not just a piece of leather. It is a way of seeing. He taught us that to map the world is to love the world. You cannot draw a coastline without first admiring its curve. You cannot name a wind without first feeling its breath. He was a man who surrendered to the evidence of the horizon. As you listen to the final pages of this story, feel your own horizon expanding. The boundaries of your room are fading. The walls are becoming transparent. You are looking out over the Mediterranean, but it is a sea of time. The waves are not made of water, but of years. Swish, 1513, swish, 1600, swish, 1800, swish, today. The rhythm is slow, it is steady, it is the heartbeat of history. We are moving back toward the silent watch. The story is closing its eyes. The callum of our narrative is being laid down. We have followed Piri from the shipyards to the palace, from the library to the deep ocean currents. We have seen the world through his stargazing eyes, and now the vision is complete. The eternal horizon is not a line you can reach. It is a promise of continuity. It tells us that as long as there is a sea, there will be a sailor. As long as there is a star, there will be a mapmaker. And as long as there is a night, there will be a dreamer. Think of the Yakimos one last time. It is the light that only appears in the dark. It is the beauty that only reveals itself when you are moving. Piri Reis left a trail of Yakimos across the pages of history. He left a glow that we can still follow when we are lost in the fog of the modern world. Do not fear the dark, he whispers from the edge of the map. For the dark is where the stars are brightest. The Mediterranean is perfectly still now. The Medum has fallen to a whisper. The Bora is a forgotten dream. The island's roads, Cyprus, Cretar, dark emeralds, resting on a bed of black velvet. The blue highway is closed for the night. You are the last sailor on the sea. Your ship is made of memory. Your sails are made of silence. You are gliding toward the ultimate harbor. There is no more geometry to calculate. There is no more latitude to measure. There is no more ink in the well. The geometry of the soul has found its center. Piri Reis is standing on the far shore, the shore of the eternal horizon. He is not holding a map. He doesn't need one. He has reached the place where the map and the world are the same thing. He is waving a slow, rhythmic goodbye. Sway, rest, sway. As he fades into the light of the Samanyolu, the world he created fades with him. The palace, the galleys, the libraries, they are all dissolving into a soft, golden mist. The yawning void is no longer empty. It is full of peace. The map of 1513 is being folded. The Kitab Bari is being closed. The Topkapi Museum is in total darkness. You are in total darkness, too. But it is a soothing darkness. It is the darkness of the womb. It is the darkness of the deep sea. It is the darkness where all maps begin and all journeys end. Listen to your own breath. It is the only wind left in the world. It is a slow, steady tide. Inhale, the world expands. Exhale, the world contracts. You are at the center of the star. You are at the heart of the rose. You are at the home of the map. The story is over. The history is told. The sea is silent. Piri Reis has finished his work, and you have finished yours. The eternal horizon is here. It is not out there in the distance. It is right here in the stillness of your heart. Close your eyes to the ink of the past. Open your soul to the silence of the future. The map is done. Sleep now on the gazelle skin. Sleep in the lapis lazuli blue. Sleep in the arms of the atlas. The watch is ended. The anchor is home. The night is yours. Good night, good night, good night.